This episode is sponsored by Anchor. If you haven't heard of Anchor by Spotify, let me fill you in. So, Anchor has everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. You can record and edit your podcast straight from your computer or your phone, whichever works for you. And it's as simple as downloading the Anchor app or going to anchor.fm. And when hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. And the best part about Anchor is that it's 100% free. It's pretty much the ultimate podcast tool at the moment, and honestly, I haven't seen it getting enough attention. We use Anchor for this very podcast, and it has made things 10 times easier because, like I said, it's literally everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Again, go to anchor.fm or download the Anchor app to get started.
What's up, guys? This is Lucid Rain, and today we're basically just going to talk about horror games, and not just games most likely, but for the most part games, and how they've kind of just turned into the same kind of cookie cutter thing over the years, with a few exceptions, of course. So we used to get games that were, all kinds of horror games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Well, we still do get Resident Evil, but my point is we used to get more unique horror games and not just first person walkathons where you don't really do anything, like Layers of Fear. I think Layers of Fear is and I like Layers of Fear. I like
that's
watching
a pretty good game.
But you don't do anything in Layers of Fear. You do almost nothing, and I feel like a lot of horror games are taking that route where you just walk.
And that's more of a thematic experience than it is a game.
Yeah.
But I remember PlayStation 1 era had great horror games. Oddworld, for one. I would consider that a horror game. That shit was, a platformer and really interesting. Obviously, the first Resident Evil, there was a fair amount of fighting games that were horror. Or at least borderline horror, and those were pretty interesting. All the dinosaur games, because Jurassic Park was coming out, so you had Dino Crisis.
Park Dino Crisis. I never played Dino Crisis. I always kind of wanted to. I just never played it. I always hear people say how good it is, though.
And a style of video game that kind of doesn't get any credit, but honestly, I think it's super fucking cool, is rail shooters.
You say rail shooters?
Yeah.
House of the Dead?
Yeah, and obviously it being on a console is a lot different than an arcade machine where you're pointing a laser at a screen, which I don't really like them in theory as far as for consoles. But going to an arcade and playing fucking zombie Resident Evil rail shooter or Jurassic Park, where you're in
those are always fun.
Yeah, you're basically in a photo booth, and you're the thing is fucking shaking and vibrating, and those are fucking awesome. I would love to buy one of those, honestly.
That would be pretty cool. They're insanely expensive most likely, but those things are cool.
So yeah, horror games hold a very special place in my heart. Just for the fact that the first Resident Evil game basically made me afraid of the dark. That game fucked me up. And I wasn't even playing it. My cousin came over and his ass was playing it. And I was sitting there watching, and it gave me some emotional damage, I think.
The game that scared me the most, because I played when I was really young, was probably Dead Space 1. Because that game came out in 2007 or 8. I don't know how old I was when that happened. When that came out, but I was pretty young, and that game is one of the scariest games. Obviously it's amplified because I'm younger, but even nowadays, I went back to that game not too long ago, and that game is still scary.
That's kind of body horror. I think Dead Space is pretty underrated.
I think so too.
I know people love it, but I think it's pretty underrated.
Yeah, I agree.
Oddworld, I mentioned that as it being a platformer. That's the game that like scared me as a kid. I mean, I've played horror games more on the like PS1 generation than I did PS2 or anything, just because I guess when you're young, you kind of get it, and that's kind of when games were first kind of really catching steam and making headway to where it was like a normal thing. So people didn't look at the ratings as much and care. So like I was 4 or 5 playing stuff that gave me fucking nightmares and fucked my head up for the rest of my life.
Well, so can you like explain like why was Oddworld scary? Because I didn't think Oddworld was a scary franchise at all. Like I'm not saying that because I played it. I'm saying like I played like one Oddworld game ever, and it like wasn't scary at all. So I don't. What are the old ones scary or something?
Well, I mean, I was 4 or 5 years old. I think Oddworld is like 1999, 2000. Like I don't remember exact dates, but it's just alien creatures with their mouths sewn shut, and basically a post-apocalyptic world, and fucking you have to sneak around, and the cutscenes kind of fucked me up. Even like basically, there's one cutscene where a bunch of Abe and a bunch of the other guys are walking, and then they get hit by like a rail, and then one of their bones pops out, and they're like, "Oh, look, a bone!"
Yeah.
We're close, and it's like I don't know. For some reason that stuck with me, and I was afraid of the game. I mean, I was very young, and I had already played the first Resident Evil at that point, or at least watched it, and so I was kind of predisposed to being afraid of video games because of that. So maybe if I didn't see Resident Evil, I might not have been afraid of it. I feel like I probably still would have been afraid. I mean, it's basically about genocide.
Yeah, I think I have heard of that a little bit.
I mean, yeah, the whole premise is just genocide of Abe's race and making them into a fucking food,
Yeah, I mean that's pretty dark, I guess. I didn't play like that many horror games like when I was really young. Like I think the first one I played was wasn't even it was on PS2, which was Resident Evil 4, and I didn't even beat Resident Evil 4, probably because I was scared of it. I don't even remember why, honestly. But yeah, I had that, and I just never beat it. I never beat a lot. There was a few horror games like Dead Space. I never beat Dead Space until I went back to it later, either, because I was just like, I'm not playing this game. Because I think Resident Evil is like, I love Resident Evil nowadays, but it's really not as scary as it used to be, in my opinion. Like I think Resident Evil 8 had had one part that I thought was genuinely scary, but besides that, that was pretty much it.
Well, I think it's crazy, and it has kind of went from movies too. Is back in the 90s and early 2000s, I feel like, let's correlate games to movies. I feel like 80s and 90s with movies, and then 90s and early 2000s with games, they relied on atmosphere.
Yeah.
And if you make the atmosphere, threatening and have a weight to it, you could even have a shitty plot, but if the atmosphere is really dingy and scary, that's gonna fucking kind of take you where you need to go, and
I mean that's what people remember. People don't remember jump scares. Like that's not memorable. What are you gonna be thinking of 5 years later after you play a game? You're gonna be thinking of the atmosphere, most likely, and maybe the story, I guess. But like, you're mostly gonna be thinking about how the game made you feel, not the 17,000 jump scares that games push on you nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, look at movies like The Exorcist, Poltergeist, stuff like that. I mean, it wasn't jump scares. It was just
Yeah.
they set up an atmosphere and kind of a feeling, and it just fucking hit you.
I mean, some of those old movies and games don't even have jump scares at all.
Yeah, I mean, let's use Resident Evil, like the first two, for example. I mean, it's fucking just polygons. You know? Like, it's just people that are fucking, like, fucking octagon-shaped people. Like, how scary can that be? But
yeah,
just the music, the atmosphere, the design, what they did with it made it
I mean,
like
that's
fucking
impressive.
terrifying.
For something that looks so graphically not good, it's impressive that they can instill fear in people anyway.
Yeah, honestly, I think that those are, if you went and played those, especially if you remembered them, it would still probably hold more weight than one of the new ones would.
Yeah, I mean, like scare factor, I think it definitely would. The newer, I love the newer games, but like, they're not scary. They're like, I don't know, they just they don't really scare me too much. Like Dead Space is like, I know I keep bringing up Dead Space, but I can't stress enough that that game is genuinely like frightening. I wish more games were like that. And Dead Space isn't even a first-person game. People think your game has to be first-person to be scary, and it just doesn't.
No, and I mean that's kind of more of a third-person shooter, you know. I mean that's kind of like, to me, it feels like if Halo was a horror movie. I mean, it's not a great comparison, but it's just like, you know, fucking space cadets on a fucking thing and just grotesque monsters. I mean, it's really not that much different than like the Resident Evil games as far as kind of like fighting biomutants, basically.
Yeah.
Even though I know those are aliens, but you know.
Yeah, it just does atmosphere really well. Like, so does Silent Hill. Silent Hill is like really, really creepy. It's like suffocating. And I
mean, Silent Hill isn't really a combat game, you know, it's not really a shooter.
No,
I mean, I guess it is, but
I think there's guns in it, but I wouldn't call it a shooter like Dead Space or Resident Evil is. Well, new Resident Evil.
And even like the brand new Resident Evil, I mean, you have weapons, but I feel like it's more or less just a survival game rather than
yeah, it's definitely not just a straight up shooter. You can't just blow everything away with a million shots. Like, it's not gonna work for you. They give you limited ammo, limited weapons. Like, you know, you can't just shoot everything.
Yeah, and I don't know. Kind of how we said, it feels like it's kind of just turned into, most things are first person perspective, and they kind of take your guns away and your weapons, your self defensive mechanisms. So you're forced to basically be defenseless, and that's kind of where they try and draw the fear from. And all those old games, you know, they give you shit to fight back, and it's still terrifying.
Yeah, and it's still scary
because if not more, and you have shit that you can fight back with. So, you know, I think that says a lot for
yeah, I think so too. They I don't know, I wish they would stop like completely removing the like offensive aspect of horror games, because I don't think it's necessary to make a game scary to have you be defenseless. Just because Outlast did it successfully doesn't mean every game has to do it.
Yeah, and just talking about Outlast, that game did it really well.
It did. I think Outlast is one of the best like defenseless horror games. Like in terms of games where you can't attack, I think Outlast does it almost the best. And there's some games that are almost Outlast level, but not quite, like Alien Isolation, which you can fight in that game, but it's a very limited. Like, you almost can't, but you can fight a little bit, and I think that's a perfect balance. Just have you be have a little self-defense, but not too much. I think that's like perfect.
Yeah. What else is there? I mean, let's talk about a game that I feel like most people will scoff that I bring it up with Five Nights at Freddy's. I mean, that kind of blew up, and you know, I think that kind of did a lot for horror games and kind of making horror games a little bit more mainstream because no one was talking about them, and then the whole Markiplier playing that and it just blowing up and having 30 sequels and
it has a lot of
and
copycats.
honestly, so we talked about ARGs in the last episode, and Five Nights at Freddy's basically just became an ARG in video game form. It's really one of the first video game ARGs, honestly, that I can think of. Maybe Slender Man was the first one.
Well, I don't think Slender Man started as a game though.
No, but
because FNAF was a game, like
but
it was always a game.
Slender Man's games like kind of added to the story and added to the ambiance. Is more or less what I was saying with that. But Five Nights basically kind of fleshed itself out into more than just a video game, into just being a cultural phenomenon. And I mean, I'll give them some respect for that. And I think if it wasn't over talked about and overplayed, people wouldn't be hating on so much.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a good concept. It really is.
I mean, I like FNAF. I just kind of don't like how they took like 10 years to finally expand the gameplay past just using cameras and jump scares, but they did it now, so I guess I'll give credit where credit is due. They finally did that.
Yeah, and I mean, they kind of took the Outlast idea and modified it, and I mean that he turned something that was super low budget into fucking cash cow.
I mean, he did something with it, so
yeah, I can't do anything but give him respect for that, and I think it was done well, truthfully.
Yeah, I think so. A more I guess, I don't know if you'd call it unconventional horror game, but one of my favorites, if you could even call it a horror game, is Little Nightmares. Because it's
I would say that's a horror game.
Yeah, I would say it's a horror game. I mean, it's like it definitely is. It's like a side-scrolling. It's almost
it's a platformer.
Yeah, it's like a physics-based platformer. It's almost as if you made Little Big Planet a horror game, almost, kinda. It's like a physics-based platformer in a horror universe, and I love that. I think it's great. And there's not much like it. There's really not a lot of horror game. I mean, I guess you could say Oddworld is somewhat like it from what you told me. But
I mean that would be its predecessor by a long shot,
Yeah.
I mean that game's fucking pretty damn old.
Yeah. So yeah, there's not many games like that. It's pretty unique. So, because what do you think of when you think of platformers? You think of like lighthearted games like Mario and like Sonic.
Yeah.
You think of that, but that game is that, but dark, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, I mean I've only seen gameplay for it, but everything I've seen, I mean, it basically has it feels like WALL-E, except demented. If you get what I'm saying, like just a bunch of grotesque, overweight people.
Yeah.
I don't really know the lore and story behind it, so I can't really talk about it too much. But
there's a lot of ambiguity, and no one really fully understands the story. But I like that because it's like we were talking about this last episode. But if you leave out details so people can speculate, it kind of enriches the world. Like a little bit because people can just just speculate on stuff, and people do it endlessly, and there's still people who don't know the full story. So I think they did something right with that. And the second game was better than the first one, I think. I don't know if they're gonna make another one, but I know the second one sold a lot more than the first one, so I hope they do.
Yeah, and I feel like we'd be doing everyone a disservice if we didn't talk about PT while we're talking about kind of how just a little snippet of a game basically sparked a giant thing where you basically had fucking 80 copycats just come out.
Isn't and then, that insane?
A bunch of copycats get super hyped up, and then most of them not come out. It's kind of how PT just didn't come out, which it was supposed to be obviously Silent Hill.
That's crazy impressive. But that they made part of a game, not even a full game, and it never came out, and everyone copied it. Like, everyone took ideas from PT, and that's just crazy because it wasn't even a full game. That's like wild.
Yeah, and it really kind of blew up, and I just remember a bunch of different kind of walk through the house, haunted house, trippy bullshit games like on the horizon, because everyone was like, well, PT's not coming out, and then all these people were like, well, this is basically going to be what PT was, except more fleshed out, and everyone's so fucking excited, like, yo, we're going to get PT, pretty much. And then a lot of those games didn't come out either.
Yeah, a lot of them didn't. A lot of the games that were more like ambitious, like, yeah, we are gonna be the PT, that never came out, and then they just also don't come out. Like, but that's the problem. I'll get to that later. But that's the problem with indie horror games. They more than half the time they don't come out. That's just the problem with that. I made a whole video about that. Like, it's a big problem. But yeah, like, PT was terrifying. That's like one of the scariest things I've played.
Yeah, PT. In that kind of era, you had games like everyone was hyping up Scorn, Agony, Soma.
Yeah, a lot of these indie horror games. Well, yeah, a lot of these like indie horror
I know Agony came out and Soma came out, but you don't hear anyone talk about either of those two. And obviously,
Agony
Scorn
was horrible, and Soma was actually very good, actually. I hear some people talk about Soma from time to time, but Agony was just trash. It was like not even worth looking at.
Which sucks, because that was a really cool premise,
It was, yeah. It was a really cool looking game, and I was like, for one, I hope this game comes out. It did come out. And for two, I hope this game is good. It was not good, so that's unfortunate. But Scorn looks so cool, but that game has been saying it's gonna come out for like 7 years now, and I'm done like anticipating it per se. I just, it'll come out when it comes out. Maybe it will get canceled. I don't know. I don't care anymore.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it seems kind of like the same thing as Agony, just gameplay wise, just kind of a different setting. And the fact that Agony kind of, ate shit, I feel like maybe they saw that and they're like, well, we can't put our game out until, let's see if people forget about that game before we release this shit or something.
Yeah,
I don't know. Just speculation.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's taking so long with that game. I think that's one of the most cool looking horror games like in recent times. And that game, I don't know if you've seen his art, but H.R. Geiger, I think his name is. That is what
I've seen
that game's art style is based off of, and it's like, it's basically right on point. Like, it looks just like his art, and it's just like the coolest thing. I just wish that game would come out already.
Yeah, so I mean, you could kind of see horror go in waves as far as gaming. At the beginning, you kind of have the third-person shooter, really atmospheric, and it even kind of went with like along with shit like, obviously with that, I'll just reiterate, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Dino Crisis, even Tomb Raider to a certain extent.
Oh yeah, because Tomb Raider used to actually, do supernatural stuff, but nowadays they don't do that with Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider's just more or less.
Yeah, where you're in you're in a temple, and you know what? It's funny because a lot of these topics are connected. Like I think Tomb Raider and the temple and the dinosaur, and it just feels like a liminal space. And that's I think one of the things that the old games had going for them is they felt really empty, and it was like an eerie type of emptiness.
Yeah, they did. That's like Silent Hill to a T.
Yeah, like it has a super just haunting feel to it, and I just think of like Resident Evil and the fucking mansion, and it just feels off-putting.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure why, but clearly it's enough that I remember it clearly and vividly.
Yeah, I mean they did something right back then with those old ass games. I mean we have games like something we haven't talked about is those, I don't know what you would call them, like quick time event like story games like Until Dawn and the other games they make. I'm drawing a blank on the other games they make, but they make games like that.
Look at all the Telltale games like The Walking Dead.
It's basically Telltale games, but horror is basically what that company makes. I think that's a cool concept. I played Until Dawn, and it was the thing I found cool about it was that it had like a bunch of different endings, and you could have everyone die, or you could have everyone live, or you could have some people live and some people die. Like the possibilities were like endless, and I thought that was really cool. I mean, it was making waves when that first came out, but people seem kind of like, I don't know if people are tired of it necessarily, but people seem like they don't really care too much about it anymore.
I know that there was just a game that came out that was basically a spiritual successor, and I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, or it might be coming out within the next couple of months. I can't remember.
It might be made by them, the same people, possibly.
I think it is.
Because they made quite a few games at this point.
Yeah, I think it was made from the same people, and yeah, it's coming out, and I think it's like basically a play on the like old slasher movies of the 90s.
Okay. A horror game I really like, but is basically just Resident Evil, to be honest, but I think it's honestly cooler than Resident Evil, is The Evil Within. Have you ever heard of that?
I have heard of that.
Yeah, it's kind of like Silent Hill mixed with Resident Evil, because it's like all the monsters in The Evil Within represent a piece of the human mind. So if someone has a really disturbed mind, the monsters are going to be more twisted in their world or in their mind, and that's basically what that game is. You're in someone's mind, and the monsters have names like I don't know, hopelessness or like desperation, hatred, like stuff like emotions and stuff like that, because that's what they represent, and I thought that was really cool. That's what Silent Hill does as well.
Yeah, and would we consider Dark Souls a horror game?
I wouldn't consider it a horror game. I mean, you could maybe consider Bloodborne a horror game, but definitely not Dark Souls, because Bloodborne's pretty creepy.
I mean, that's kind of just like an atmospheric, dark, everything's really fucking dark and brooding and brutal, and even I guess like something like The Witcher, I guess, I don't know, you can make an argument that it's kind of a horror game.
It's got scary elements to it.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they could do a lot more with it, especially the fact that we're getting into VR. And when VR kind of gets perfected and it's more of a thing, I think that will be the perfect thing for horror. Because horror is all about immersion,
Yeah, right.
So if you can basically be in the setting and be forced to see it face to face, I mean, think about all the shit that you could do with that.
Yeah, I mean, we've had VR horror games, but they're never really good. and they don't do much with it, honestly. So, I mean, we're probably, the next PlayStation VR is coming out within the next year or so. So maybe we'll see more people use that. I don't know, make some actual like good games with that.
Yeah, I mean, have you played any VR games? I've never played any VR anything, so I don't really know much about it.
I think I tried VR at like a friend's house. Like, yeah, I did like a long time ago, but that was it. And honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of VR. I would rather just, I don't know. I'd rather just play a game normally, personally. But like,
Yeah,
it is a cool concept.
I think it's probably the next step, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean, considering, we're looking at gaming, and right now it's all about visuals, and eventually it's going to be about getting put in the damn game,
Yeah. There's this game that came out recently called Returnal. It was a PS5 exclusive, and it was a shooter, like roguelike shooter, third person shooter, but it had a lot of like creepy elements to it. It was almost like Lovecraft, like like everything had tentacles, and like there was these like crazy huge cosmic beings. It was really cool. If you ever get a PS5, you might like that game. But then again, that game's like extremely hard, so you might not like that aspect of it.
I think it's kind of weird that they haven't made a God of War set in the H.P. Lovecraft universe type of game. Where, because God of War is all about fighting giant
That would be
titans,
insane.
and
I never really thought about that. That would be really cool.
yeah, I don't know. I'm surprised no one has thought of that yet.
I mean, the Lovecraftian games, because Lovecraft can be so scary, but the games we get from it are never good for some reason. I don't know why.
Call of Cthulhu, what else was there? There was one that was about World War II, I think.
Call of Cthulhu was like, had pretty bad reviews. The Sinking City was another one. That was kind of a third person shooter-ish kind of game. Heard that game wasn't good. There was a really old game with Cthulhu in it. I don't remember what it was called though. There was one recently called The Beach or something like that, which I don't know if that one was good or not. It was like an indie game. But the ones that are not indie games are usually like really not that good. I don't know why. It's like H.P. Lovecraft is a curse. I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know. But cosmic horror is just a really cool thing. I feel like movies don't even really get it right, honestly.
Well, I think it more or less plays on existential dread.
Yeah.
I
guess that's just a hard thing to convey, I guess.
Yeah, so I think it really does lend itself to books, because when you're reading a book, it's all about you're imagining the world. And basically, your imagination is what sets up the horror.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's definitely a lot easier to get people thinking, I guess, with I don't know, with a book.
Yeah, and a game that we didn't mention, that Amnesia.
Oh yeah, Amnesia was like, that was like the predecessor to those kinds of first-person games, honestly. Puzzle-based, like, first-person horror games. That game really kicked that off. The first Amnesia.
Yeah, and I mean, Amnesia is honestly kind of legendary.
Yeah. I played the first one for a little bit. I wasn't too fond of it, but this was like 10 years after the first game came out, so I'm playing this super old game, and maybe it doesn't hold up too well, I don't know, but I wasn't crazy about it. But that's basically what kicked off PewDiePie's career, is Amnesia.
Yeah, a genre of games that are kind of underrated and aren't talked about, and they're usually were horror-esque, and they're more geared towards kids, is the point and click adventure games, like all the Nancy Drew ones. I remember playing those, and like they were always really good.
I never played any of those. I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Let me think of like what some of the titles of some of these Nancy Drew games are. Because I remember one was like a cursed carnival. Another one was about black hounds or black dogs, which like Nancy Drew the Haunted Carousel, Nancy Drew Ghost Dog on Moon Lake, The Phantom of Venice. I mean they were pretty good games. Just like point and click adventures lend themselves to horror too, especially ones that are like detective mysteries. I mean, those really lend themselves to be
Yeah. I haven't played too many like point and click games. I feel like they don't really make those anymore. I mean, I'm sure they do to some extent, but I don't think they're like big anymore, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is, PC, you used to have kind of the point and click adventures and shit like that, and consoles, you had different things, but now PC is just another console.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks because I really do wish that they would make games like that. Because I mean, I remember playing those, and obviously I was young, so stuff like that's scary when you're young.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. It's all just atmosphere.
Yeah. Yeah, I like watching people play those kinds of games. Like I watch Markiplier play those sometimes, and I enjoy it. But I feel like I wouldn't enjoy playing them too much. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely interesting, and it's more detective than it is like horror. But I don't know. I would say those are pretty fucking interesting games, and I'm glad that I thought about them. I haven't thought about those in a very long time. And let's just bring up Flash games for a second. There used to be some scary fucking Flash games.
Oh yeah, for sure. I remember just going on like what was that website? It was called miniclip.com. It was just like a Flash game site, and they would have
I played on Miniclips all the time.
Yeah, they had these like side scroller horror games that would I don't know, some of those things are like genuinely scary back then.
Yeah, so there's one game I don't remember what it was called, and I never remembered what it was called. But I played it. My friend, when he would have his birthday, he would always have like a big sleepover, and a bunch of people would go to his house and sleep over, and we would always play this one game on his computer, and it was like you start out in like a church, and then you go to a farmhouse, and it was just like fucking a desolated, fucked up place. And I just remember it being like super fucking creepy and scary.
Yeah, it's a shame because they shut down Adobe Flash, so
yeah,
I think a lot of those
why
sites are dead
exactly
now.
did they do that shit?
I don't remember. I mean, maybe it was because people weren't using it anymore. I don't know. It's kind of a shame.
There were so many things that.
Yeah. There's a lot of Flash content. Like, and it wasn't just games. Like, there was like, like not like films, but like videos and stuff too. And all that's gone now. That's all dead. Like, you can't even revisit. The Wayback Machine doesn't even let you play those games. So, I mean, you can look at the homepage of those websites, but that's about it.
So I guess it was about security issues and them getting tired of having to deal with it.
Oh, really?
So I mean, it does suck because there were so many good games and different content.
So that's like a piece of history. Like, that's just gone now. I mean, I'm sure people still make like games, like games like that, but they don't use Flash. I don't know what they would use. I guess they would just use like Unity or something. That's something I haven't thought of. What do they make? What do they make these small games with now if they don't use Flash? I wonder what they use.
I guess they don't make. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know. I
don't
guess
know.
they have to use the actual engine and shit.
Yeah, like a Unity or like Unreal or something.
But let's see. I'm trying to think of other horror games that were. I mean, we missed a couple. Like there was horror games, and then there was kind of like the shock horror game, like Extermination,
I've never heard of
which
that.
which was a PS2 game, and it was just a survival horror PS2 game. You should look it up, honestly.
What's it called?
Extermination. It was basically
This
kind of
sounds
like
familiar.
yeah. I mean, I had it and I never really played it.
Dude, there's this game. It's not really this. I guess it's kind of off topic. There's this game I've been looking for on PS2. I think it was yeah, it was definitely PS2. Of it was a scary game, but I don't think it was a horror game where you're going through like these dark hallways just shooting like aliens and robots, and it was like a really fun game, and I played the demo of it. I didn't even have the full game, and I can't for the life of me find that game or what it's called or gameplay or anything. I've been looking for it for like so long now.
Can you describe it?
It was like it was mostly just hallways for some reason, at least in the demo it was like dark hallways, and you had like laser guns and like you had like 4 different weapons. I mostly just remember the laser one. I think you had like an automatic like bullet gun too. And yeah, you'd basically go through hallways just like killing a bunch of like robots and stuff like that. And it almost looked like a PS1 game, but I know it was on PS2 because I don't know if PS1 had demo discs. So I'm pretty sure it was on PS2. And it was such a fun demo, and I would play the demo over and over again, and I couldn't find it. I even looked up like the demo discs and all the games on them. I still couldn't recognize any of them.
Was it a jam pack? Was it one of the jam packs?
I think it was, because I used to buy those, so I'm pretty sure it was a jam pack disc.
And I think it's kind of crazy, even with the stuff like Manhunt. Like that was kind of a horror game, and that was just basically shock value. And what was the other game that was
for sure
like shock value bullshit?
Yeah, Manhunt. I mean, Manhunt got banned in multiple countries. I think. I mean, it's kind of the very definition of shock value.
Yeah, there was another game that was just kind of like shock value the whole fucking time, and I can't really remember what it was fucking called, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Was it that game where you just shoot innocent people by any chance?
Yeah, I feel like it started with an R.
Hatred is what one of them was called. It was this game, black and white game, where you just literally just kill people and like innocent people, and that was it. Like that was the only objective. It was a really like edgy shock value game.
Other game, even I don't know, horror is just such a diverse genre. I mean, you can do so many things with it, because if something has a horror element, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be dark or brooding or fucked up, or like even shit as simple as like Guitar Hero is something that's Guitar Hero, where it's just all about like you end up fucking battling Satan in a guitar battle, and like fucking battling the Grim Reaper, and like shit where it's just like super dark elements. But obviously that's a really fucking lighthearted game, because you're just playing fucking songs on a guitar. But
do you remember people on Little Big Planet would make those horror levels, and it'd be Jeff the Killer, like Slender Man. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
those are so big on Little Big Planet. They were so popular. Everyone made them.
Yeah, and we're gonna make a couple levels like that, I feel like. For those of you that don't know, we were making levels on Little Big Planet, and I think some of them were pretty good, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I really don't remember the levels we made at all, but like...
We made obstacle course levels.
Yeah, if you don't know what Little Big Planet is, it's basically a platformer where you make levels, but you don't have to if you don't want to. And it's a PlayStation exclusive, so it was. I loved it back in the day. I wish they'd make another one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, kind of. If we could probably wrap it up, I would say, like, yeah, horror games really are pretty cool, and just they definitely, I feel like, get overlooked compared to, like, we have fucking shooters and the basic fucking shooters all the time. Your
Yeah,
basic
I think so,
bullshit
too.
RPGs, and even shit like fucking Scooby-Doo games. Like, I mean, Scooby-Doo and fucking Goosebumps, point and click adventure.
Yeah.
I mean, horror is like for everyone, really. It just is like
Yeah, that's kind of true. I mean, there's light-hearted horror like Scooby-Doo, like you said. So.
And I don't know. I mean, I just can't think of many other things that are that versatile.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about movies in this too, but fuck, I guess we just talked about horror games, which, like,
We could do that in another episode.
pretty alright with me.
We can talk about movies in another episode.
Nice. Well, thank you guys for listening. Maybe you guys can, if you're listening to this on YouTube, put some horror games that you like down in the comments. If you're listening to this on any other platform, maybe go on to our Instagram and tell us a couple horror games that you played that scarred you for life and made you feel like a piece of shit and fucked your whole life up, because there's plenty that, fucked my whole life up. Especially Resident Evil. That ruined my childhood.
It was Dead Space for me, but that was late.
Yeah,
that was later for me than it was for you. Like, I was way older than you were when you played Resident Evil. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.